Hardly a week goes by that some television outfit isn't invited to come along on a drug bust. The drug bust in this house is one they just as soon forget. This retired farmer and his wife are just two of nobody knows how many Americans the government has to apologize to every year for treating them like the criminals they aren't and never were.
Can you imagine 8 masked men, guns?
Storming through the house, and I kept asking, what have we done wrong? I says, we don't hurt anybody.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Willie Safer.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Steve Croft.
I'm Leslie Stahl. Those stories and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes.
Willie Sutton said he robbed banks because that's where the money was. If Willie was alive, he'd probably be working for the government, because that's where the money really is. Last year, various government agencies paid crooks somewhere between $40 million and infinity. We don't know how much, no one will say. It was paid to so-called criminal informants for information on drug dealers. The information has led to enormous busts and to horrifying mistakes in which innocents paid dearly. We can't give you numbers because, again, the government does not keep track of its disasters. The biggest disaster may be the war on drugs itself. Over a decade, $100 billion has been spent, and more Americans are addicted than ever before. But you wouldn't believe it from watching television.
Police, search warrant! Bad boys, bad boys. What you gonna do?
Drug busts are television's meat and potatoes. Action guaranteed. And law enforcement, from county cops to the feds, bring us along to show one and all the taxpayers' money doing dangerous work. And most of all, they invite us in to record the result.
That's the biggest seizure of caps I've seen in 20 years.
Barely a week goes by without the record drug bust of the day, week, or century.
They need the numbers, they need the statistics. It's a business. In our country, it's a business now.
The agents are under pressure, career path pressure, to come up with bigger, more newsworthy cases.
And if they don't, somebody's in trouble.
Strange bedfellows, Eugene Iredale, a San Diego defense attorney, and Michael Levine. For 25 years, for 4 different agencies, America's top undercover cop. Both say the net result of the war on drugs is a bloated, corrupt bureaucracy, whose only measure of success is the big bust, the show.
The key to that show are criminal informants. They have the key. So it's a quid pro quo arrangement. You save our agency, you help us convince the American people that this drug war really works, and we'll get you off whatever charges we can.
Almost always paid informants. Paid sometimes enormous amounts. Interestingly enough, invariably paid in cash.
I would say that the career path for an informer, a criminal informer, is a lot more lucrative for that of an agent. Crime actually does pay.
Most exciting game in town.
Bill is not his real name. For 8 years, he was one of the government's favorite informants. Neither he nor his handlers will say how much he was paid. We do know it was plenty. For example, a $700,000 airplane like this one, a gift from the U.S. government. The Justice Department says during those years, as a pilot, he was also running one of the biggest cocaine rings in South Florida. He's in jail for that, facing possibly 10 life sentences.
Were you running drugs while you were working for the government, for profit, for yourself?
It's pretty difficult to infiltrate these operations and without associating or being involved with drug trafficking or drug traffickers.
Did the government know everything that was going on, every step of the way?
No.
Bill says that it's on the record that agents gave him carte blanche to do whatever he wanted. Like many informants, he, rather than agents, often seemed to run cases.
If an informer is slick enough and knows how to play the system enough, he can cleverly manipulate these people around and get them to violate their own rules and regulations.
We just seem to benefit each other, myself and the government agents.
The benefits to the government were busts. The benefits to Bill, according to the government, were this house on a private airstrip in Florida, at least 4 airplanes, and a ranch in Montana. Not every snitch gets to be as rich as Bill, but they all share one common quality. They are pathological liars. 7 a.m. Northern California, last Thanksgiving weekend.
The information that we received was that there was a drug lab in the process of cooking narcotics.
An informant had tipped off the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department about a drug lab operating from this remote farmhouse.
There supposedly was a biker type described as tiny, 6'5", 280 pounds.
Armed with a search warrant and ready for battle, the SWAT team moved in. Inside the house, Bill and Marion Hosselman were getting ready for breakfast.
I looked out the bathroom window and I seen these 2 pickup trucks parked across the street from our home. And then
Okay.
Marion, what
I'm
happened?
sorry.
Okay.
Then I walked to the front door and I seen these burly shadows standing there.
The SWAT team identified itself and demanded he open the door.
I says, I'm not letting you in. I don't know if you're telling me the truth. I don't know who you are. You could be robbing me. I says, I won't let you in. So I asked my wife, call 911.
Before she could get to the phone, the SWAT team battered down the door.
Can you imagine 8 masked men, guns, just getting hold of both of you, and one taking him one direction, one taking me the other direction.
And then one of them put his hand across my face. The other one knocked my feet out from under me, and I fell to the floor. And they were storming through the house. And I kept asking, what have we done wrong? I says, we don't hurt anybody.
For an hour, the Hosselmans were kept on the floor at gunpoint, their hands cuffed behind their backs. They listened as the SWAT team searched their house.
All I could hear these people say on their little radios that they have attached to them was negative, 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 negative.
One group of guys had you inside. There's another group came out here. Is
Yes,
that?
and I thought to myself, oh, they're going to break another door down, so this is the door that they battered in. And you can see...
Well, they sure did a job on this one.
They did an excellent job. And my
An
grandson...
excellent search, maybe, but the SWAT team found no drugs, no drug lab, no 6'5" biker. Just a set of toy trains and a terrified retired couple. 5 days later, they were still trying to overcome the trauma. And 5 days later, the Sheriff's Department was still red-faced. Under Sheriff Crawshaw had the unhappy task of trying to explain why the informant was believed.
Well, specifically what he corroborated was, of course, the description and the location of the house. The fact that there was a motorhome behind the house that couldn't be seen from the road. He described the dog that was at the house.
This is the vicious killer dog you were supposed to have.
Yes, this dog and 2 Rottweilers. I never heard of a Rottweiler.
The Hosselmans also have no idea who the informant might be, and the Sheriff's Department will not tell you. What's your best guess in hindsight that he concocted the whole tale?
Yes.
I just hate to think what would have happened if the couple had been more panicked and went and reached for a gun.
I agree with you. I hate to think of that.
I was treated like a criminal for almost 2 days after this happened. In the emergency room, I can remember hearing conversation around me, and I remember somebody saying he was involved in a drug bust.
Don Carlson is the ultimate straight arrow. He almost did not survive his encounter with a federal drug task force last August. As an executive of Anacomp, a Fortune 500 company, he'd gone from work to dinner, then to his home in Poway in suburban San Diego. Federal agents watched him arrive. There on an informant's tip that several hundred kilos of cocaine was stashed in the garage, protected by 4 armed guards. Around midnight, Carlson was asleep. The next thing he heard was his door being battered in.
I stood at the extreme end of that hallway and hollered as loud as I could, who's there?
Who did you think was out there?
I thought they were robbers, burglars. I thought my life was in danger.
And still no identification?
Nobody ever communicated with me that evening, period.
Carlson panicked, tried dialing 911, then went for his handgun, returned to the hall, and a bomb went off, something police call a distraction device.
And I fired twice at the front door.
Then what?
And then I'm almost immediately, I'm hitting this leg, and I
He
returned.
staggered back to his bedroom, dropped his gun, and collapsed. Twice more he was shot. As he lay bleeding on the floor, Carlson was handcuffed and shackled.
I thought I was in the middle of the worst nightmare I had ever experienced. And I do remember wondering what the hell this was. I did not know. I mean, I couldn't fathom it.
The feds were having their own nightmare. The same informant told them of another stash. So while one group of agents was breaking into Carlson's house, another group was breaking into this house a few miles away, and they too came up empty. But the results were a lot less tragic. There was nobody home. In fact, the house was vacant. So far that night, the government was batting 0 for 2. In some disarray, the agents picked up their informant, Ron Edmonds.
He said, somebody just got shot, and it's your fault. I said, hey, what? Somebody just got shot, and it's your fault. Somebody got to pay for it.
Ron spoke to a San Diego television station shortly after the raids. At the time, his identity was still protected by the government. The night of the raids, his government handler was not amused.
They claimed that I said at the office that I just picked our house randomly and told them to go in it. Oh, no, 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 no. There's a lot of things I might have said, scared as I was, but I don't think I necessarily said that like that.
It should have been clear by now that Ron was unreliable. But the very next day, agents confronted Tony and Michelle Jones. Ron had accused them of being major smugglers.
And at that point, I was just in what you might consider a complete state of shock.
Especially so because she herself is a deputy marshal, whose husband had met Ron at a gym. The cops searched the house and found nothing. The third phony accusation in 24 hours. She says had the SWAT team moved in on her the way they did on Carlson, she would have reacted like the cop she is.
I would have come out shooting because nobody bangs into your house at 12 o'clock at night, you know, and especially when you're not involved in anything and you have no suspicion that anything's going on. If your door's being knocked in, you know, you protect yourself.
The Joneses were furious. Don Carlson was fighting for his life. The government was investigating itself. And their man, Ron. He was a small-time crook with a record a mile long and a small-time snitch for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department in Tampa, Florida. When he moved to San Diego, he went big time as a federal informant. He said he knew all about a major cocaine cartel. They believed him and paid him.
I don't mean to be cynical, but I have a prediction for you. What they're going to do is they're going to indict this informant, and they're going to try to lay it all at the door of the informant. They're going to accuse him of doing everything wrong.
Right. 2 months later, William Braniff, the U.S. attorney, made a statement.
Today, a federal grand jury indicted Ronald B. Edmonds on 25 counts of making false statements in a matter within the jurisdiction of the government. As is clear from the indictment, it is the position of the government that the entire cocaine conspiracy relayed by the defendant was false.
It's clear from the search warrant and other documents that the government did virtually nothing. Almost no investigation to corroborate Ron's claims. They substituted one dubious man's word for old-fashioned police work. That blunder will scar Don Carlson for the rest of his life. He will have only limited use of his right arm and leg. His lungs have not returned to normal. He is, of course, suing the government.
You must be a terribly bitter man.
Morley, I am not bitter. Early on in the hospital, when I was struggling for my life, I told myself that I would not become bitter over this when what I needed to do is work towards getting my health back and getting out and getting my life back together.
At the same time, I understand that.
Stop a second?
Sure.
Jeez.
And Ron Edmonds, the informant, well, he's been on the run since the end of January when the grand jury indicted him.